Alright, this is separating mixtures, the video presentation for it. The learning intention for this is to be able to identify different methods of separating mixtures. So our first one, and this is our first just general category, is gravity. So there's going to be 3 different areas that we go over within gravity. The first one is centrifuge. A centrifuge is a machine that is used to spin mixtures at high speeds and separate them. One way to think about this is the ride of the fair that spins you around, and as it starts to spin, you get sucked out to the side and you stick to the walls, and you can move upside down and things like that. Centrifuge does a similar thing in separating the heavier things that will get stuck to the side and the lighter things will come up the middle. This is a video on it. If you would like to watch it, it goes over how a centrifuge works, and it gives an example using colored water. Only watch it until about the 5-minute mark, as after that point he actually just starts talking about the different parts that actually make up the centrifuge, which is not what we need to know. So the next thing that we're going to be looking at is gravity in rivers. So this is a video that they show, someone put a camera just inside a river to show how rocks and different types of sediment get moved into the river. So if you notice this, they mentioned it's not sped up. So this is the actual speed of the rocks, and you can hear the rocks actually hitting the GoPro as it goes. So here you can see lots of rocks are moving here. I'm going to skip forward to about here. So notice right here we have, there's a dip in the riverbed. And notice what the rocks do here is that as they come in, they stop moving. Everything around it is still moving, but inside the actual hole, and unfortunately it doesn't show it quite perfectly, but if we go back, so you can see the hole again here, and as the rocks come in, they stop getting pushed by the river, while everything else that is on the outside here keeps moving. What's happening is that as the rocks drop, they drop below the actual flow of the river, where the flow isn't as strong, and so they settle into the ground. If you remember in social studies from a couple years ago where you looked at the gold rush, this is the similar idea of how gold gets moved out into rivers. So it gets worn out just by water breaking down different rocks, and it gets put into the river. As it goes, it gets washed downstream by the flow, and at different points it'll settle, like points like this, or into higher points like sandbars that are in the middle of rivers. It doesn't want to go to our next slide. Let's try this. Alright, the next one we're going to look at is river deltas. So if you look over here, this would be the start of where the river is kind of ending. As it comes out here, this is the point that the river is meeting the ocean. And as it meets the ocean, the flow of the river slows down significantly. And you can see this a little better on this side, that you can see the really nice clean river here. And as it starts coming in here, you can see a lot more dirt and sand that's being built up. What's happening is, as the river slows down, all that sand and dirt that the river has been pushing, like we saw in the last video, slows down and it settles to the ground. And what happens is it starts to build up. River deltas are hugely important, as they're a place that it tends to be a really good farmland. Lots of ancient civilizations, most notably the Egyptians, were based around river deltas, where when rivers flooded, it left lots of sediment and really fertile soil for them to be able to grow their crops on. Another one is tailing ponds, and just please notice there is a mistake here. It should be stored. So tailing ponds are basically waste storage facilities for mines. what happens is when mines, in the process that they get their ore or their oil or whatever it is that they're taking out, they use a lot of water. In that water, it gets mixed with different things, and it's the waste products of different things. What they do is they put all of these waste products in behind dams and let them sit. As it goes, or as the water sits, the things that are inside the water start to settle out to the ground and come to the bottom. Once that's happened, depending on what it is, the water can be reused in the mine, though you would not want to be... They don't reintroduce this into the environment as it's still not great water, but at a point, they can take the water off the top for it to be able to be reused. They also use it, some of the materials need to be kept wet in order to store it, so they'll keep water continuously on it in order to be able to store it safely. This is a quick video of a guy explaining how tailings ponds are used in the oil and gas industry. A note that should be made on this is it is a video made by Oil and Gas Canada, so their bias is, or their point of view is going to be to have people want to like their product and to see the positive side. So it really is only the positive side of tailings ponds. Tailings ponds tend to be very toxic, and they, if they break, tend to be very bad for the environment. So the second thing, and this is the only slide for this one, is that we're doing filtration, or sorting by size, or separating by size. If you remember back to the first set of notes, we talked about filtration, where you pass a mixture through something, and that something leaves you with two parts, of the filtrate and with the residue. If you remember back to our coffee example, when the coffee is passed through a coffee filter like this right here, what you get left with in the filter itself is, in here, you get left with the coffee beans. The coffee beans are the actual large parts that can't go through the filter paper. The stuff that comes out the bottom, or is able to pass through the filter, is the actual coffee, and that tends to be the liquid, and you don't want your grounds in that, otherwise it changes how the coffee is. If you think about if you have a hot tub or a pool, now these are actually air filters, but you would have something similar to this in a hot tub or a pool that's going to filter out the kind of gunk that gets built up in there. So they filter out the things and let the clean water pass through. Final thing to think about is if you ever make pasta, you want to separate the pasta out from the water. So you'll put it into something that's similar to this. If you notice the holes here, the holes allow the water through, where the pasta is large enough that it can't pass through the hole, and then it stays in the bowl. And this allows you to separate the two. And that is how our main ways that we can separate mixtures. I'd recommend you go back and watch the videos. The videos do give an example of actual in motion things with gravity. And if you have any questions, let me know.